Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth-running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the last interview. And if you missed the episode and would like to listen, links can be found on my YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. And if you'd like to receive notifications on when the podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Now let's learn a little bit about my guest today. Mark and Krikke enjoyed running their own Airbnbs so much that they decided to do it for other people. Their path to running their own property management business and financial freedom started with Airbnb rentals. Now they educate young families on the income opportunities with real estate investment. Mark received his Bachelor of Arts from McMaster University and is a self-proclaimed audiovisual nerd. He played amateur Australian football for 20 years. Kirsten is a busy mom of 4 and retired nurse, earned a Bachelor of Nursing from the University of Manitoba. She loves gardening and decorating Airbnbs, and they live in Ontario. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Candy.
I'm happy to have you here. I'm looking forward to this discussion. But before I get into any questions that I have for you, I'd love for you just to tell me a little bit more about yourself and why are you passionate about property management and real estate investment?
Okay, yeah. Well, you kind of covered some of it in the bio. I forgot we had that bio out there, but we started hosting Airbnb around 2014. So we enjoy traveling. Haven't done much of it lately, but Kirsten and I do enjoy traveling. And we had discovered Airbnb upon our, in our travels and just kind of fell in love with it. Just traveling with small children, we have 4 small children at home. We didn't, at the time we had 1 or 2, but we thought it was such a great way to travel with the family, so much better than hotels. So we quickly decided, hey, we can probably incorporate this into our rental. And that rental was just the basement apartment of our house. Mm-hmm. So it's now called house hacking. We didn't know that at the time. We just thought, hey, this is a good way to maybe to help pay the mortgage. And it certainly did that, just a pokey little 1-bedroom apartment. So this was back, 2014, I think, when Airbnb was still pretty new, especially in Canada, where we're from. We're a little bit slower to adopt some of the things like some of these services than in the United States. So anyways, we did that for quite a while. Then we bought a second property and ended up Airbnb-ing that as well, made it into a duplex. And yeah, the upper unit and the lower unit. So again, in our area, we've got basements. Not all of your audience might have that, but we're in a frost zone, so we always dig deep. And if you dig deep, you might as well make that space habitable. So we did that for a while, and then thought, you know what, we enjoy this. Like, we really like this, and this has worked well for us. Maybe we could tell other people about it. So we'd started a property management company as well. Being self-employed, especially in Canada, it's a lot harder to get financing. So I thought, how can we get a bigger piece of the property pie so we can sort of get a piece of other people's properties by managing it, right? No equity, but at least some cash flow. And since we kind of knew what we were doing, we thought we knew what we were doing anyways on the short-term rental side. Yeah, we started that during the pandemic, right? As Kirsten was going into labor with our last child, we actually had to reschedule, I think, the first showing, because labor was happening. So Kirsten called them and said, hey, can we do this another time? And they were understanding, thankfully. So in the middle of the pandemic, we started that. Maybe not the greatest or the most intuitive thing to do in the middle of a global shutdown, but it worked out. And through that time, we thought, we realized that we're just ordinary folks. And we saw other people who were looking at doing some of the same things and helped them with that. And then more people. And we thought, there's something here I think we can share with other people. We can help boost our own profile, right, with a book. But we also, I think, have a message, especially for, this could be for everybody, but especially for maybe rookie real estate investors young, I mean, we're not that young anymore, but younger couples with children, especially, if you've got, we have 4 children, it's hard for both parents to work and have an income and still
Mhm.
have like a decent quality of life. So that's why Kirsten retired from nursing and really focused on raising her children. And working from home, having her own business also allows me to spend a little bit more time at home as well with the kids. So if one of us is
Good.
in, the other one can be out working.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I mean, real estate, short-term rentals might seem like an odd thing to be passionate about, but we are, just because of the opportunities that it can give average folks like us to secure their financial freedom.
Right. Well, and some people may have thought, like, I want to get into real estate investment, but if I buy a property, whether I'm going to, lease it to somebody, for a year at a time or 6 months at a time, or I want to get into Airbnb, but am I going to have enough people having interest, to make it worthwhile? Or I don't want to have to deal with helping when things go wrong, right? If there's maintenance issues, so that's why I thought this topic would be great today too, because you're touching on not only the real estate investment, but also that someone else can manage it for you, right? And so you don't have to deal with all of that. So going into the topic of real estate investments, though, can you talk about the top reasons why someone might want to actually invest in real estate?
Sure. So the first thing I'll say is that real estate is not passive. Everybody is looking for passive income, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
passive, right? If you find someone to manage it for you, sure, then there's a degree of being passive there. But we always recommend, if you're getting into it, you should manage your own property, at least the first one, so you know what's going on. So that if you
Mm-hmm.
do engage a property manager later on, you have an idea of what they're talking about, just so you don't get taken advantage of. Yeah, I think it's a good idea of any endeavor that you're getting into, a little bit about.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's 7 good reasons, which we kind of lay out in the book, which, I won't go through all of them, but basically, if you look at real estate investing, the way that it's set up, especially in North America, it's the best way for average folks to be able to have a good investment. It will outperform the stock market, anything else that you can think of, right? If you're a high net worth individual, you've got some more options, and then private investing and things like that may work out better. But
Mm-hmm.
most wealthy individuals in the U.S. have real estate, and there's some pretty good reasons for that, especially in the States. Great tax advantages, not as much in Canada, but even still, generally you're buying an asset. So you're using leverage, which is credible. You can buy an asset for 10 or 20% of its total value, but then you get all of the equity growth in that. So you get 100% of the equity growth, you get 100% of the cash flow. So you get all the benefits of it. And yeah, there's downsides, because if there's maintenance to be done, you have to do that. If you have bad tenants, you got to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
But that aside, it's still an incredible opportunity for most people. And you have someone else paying down the asset. So even if the equity doesn't grow that much, depending on where you are, you're still going to have growth over 20, 30 years, because somebody else is paying the cost of that asset down. So I can't think of many other businesses where you can do that. And I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
one reason to get into small business, as well as kind of that leverage, right? I have an audiovisual contracting business, and it was bigger before, but we've kind of downsized to focus on real estate and property management. But it's the same concept, right? I can only do so many installs a day. If I
Mm-hmm.
want to leverage that, I bring in more people, more employees. So then I'm going to
Right.
pay them a portion of that total job cost, but then I
Mm-hmm.
can do more jobs. So it's kind of the same principle, right? That we use in small business as well, is that leverage. So yeah, we just think it's super for average folks, and it's accessible for everybody.
So if someone is thinking like, okay, this is a great opportunity, whether it's a room in their house, or like you said, you started with the basement, or they're looking to purchase a totally separate property that would be able to be, rented out on its own, someone might be afraid, if I'm going to be laying out, cash, especially to purchase another thing, like, how do I know that people are going to find my property, want to actually rent my property, and how do I go about that to make it worth the investment?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It depends on where you are and what you're looking for. So anytime we talk to, potential new investors, we always want to review sort of their objectives. Like, why do you want to do this? What is your objective? Is your objective cash flow right now? Is it just long-term wealth in the form of equity that's building up? And then that kind of determines your strategy going forward. So a lot of people for many years have just gone the long-term rental route, because that was the most common way to do it. So that involves doing some research, right? Is there demand for long-term rentals in your market? Or doesn't have to be your market, right? It could be a market somewhere else, right? We're looking at investing in Tennessee, which is pretty far away from us, but all the numbers make sense. So you have to do some research to make sure that there is demand for it. And then especially if you're getting into short-term or mid-term rentals, which is a new and quickly growing category, always have a plan B. So usually we recommend that if you're looking at it, make sure that if you want to do a short-term rental, could you use it as a midterm if you had to? If that all fell through, could you use it as a long-term rental? Especially for first-time investors, more sophisticated investors who are investing in exclusively vacation properties, for example. If they know what they're doing, that can be lucrative and it can work out well. But, your first one, you may not want to buy that $1 million cottage down at the lake because you don't know everything, and you have to do that research. So this is why we like kind of starter homes, urban properties, because you have the availability for not always short term, depending on regulations in the city, but at least midterm and long term. Okay. And there's always demand for starter homes. So where we live, so Southern Ontario is a province in Canada, Toronto being the largest city in Canada, there's a tremendous amount of population growth, right? Our per capita growth in Canada, or percentage-wise, is somewhere around 1.5%. So we're welcoming this year, I think the target is about 500,000 new immigrants. And that doesn't include international students, which could be another 300,000 or 400,000. We don't really count that for some reason. But so for comparison, in the States, which has a population 10 times our size, you're welcoming about 1 million newcomers per year. So it's huge population growth, which puts a lot of pressure on housing prices and rentals. So basically, if you have a place in Southern Ontario, you can rent it. Just the question is how much. How much money do you want to spend on making it nice? And how much can you get it for? And then just, what's the property price? Does it make sense to rent it out? So do your research, be aware of the rental market in your city. And I mean, that's North America wide. It is a growing population. So there's I'm generalizing, but there's always demand for long-term rentals. So it comes down to doing some research and just making sure that, and we get into some of that in the book as well, how to do that research and what to do.
So you've used a couple terms that I want to make sure that we all understand exactly what they mean. So you've had short-term, midterm, and long-term rentals. So can you define for the listeners specifically what those mean?
Absolutely. So when we wrote the book, we're really excited about telling people about midterm rentals, which is kind of a new category. And it's really taken off in the last probably 2 years. So a long-term rental is just your standard year-long lease. And that can turn into multiple years, but that's something I think everybody's pretty familiar with. Short-term rentals, Airbnb really created this category for houses anyways. Vacation rentals always existed, but they brought it into cities across the world. So that would be a stay of 30 days or less. And, depending on your regulations in your city, that could be 28 days or less, but you're looking at a month or less. And, your typical short-term stay might be 3 or 4 days. And then we discovered that there is a market for midterm rentals. So that would be a rental of 30 days or longer, but less than a year. And so there's different target audiences for each of those. Long-term rentals, we kind of know that's just people who need a place to live because they're living in a city and they're working and doing whatever they're doing, somewhere to call home. Short-term rentals, typically vacation, but could also be people visiting their family in town, like for hospital, in town for work, new immigrants as well. And then midterm rentals, we have found pretty good target audience for actual homeowners, that's really who you want to target if you're doing midterm rentals, homeowners and employees. So people who are doing, let's say, a renovation. So during the pandemic, especially, people were not traveling or staying at home. tremendous equity growth in our area anyway. So people had the money to put into their homes. So if you're doing a major renovation, you might need to be out of your home for 3 months. Midterm rental hits that perfectly. New immigrants just landing in Canada, or it could be the States, wherever, you might need a month or two to just kind of get your feet under you and figure out where you want to live and what you're going to do, right? So I'm talking about primarily economic immigrants, not like asylum seekers. And then also just employ people in town for work. So that's a big one as well, right? Corporate rentals have always been around, but typically that was aimed at like C-level executives, so CEOs and that kind of thing. So we host like a lot of contractors, for example. There's shipyards in our city, and we have guys coming in to work on the ships. So perfect thing for that. In the States, you've got traveling nurses. That's not really a category in Canada. Our nurses don't travel. They just find a place to work and they stay there. But yeah, huge category in the States. So that has been popular for quite a while as well. But it's expanding to other people. You've got digital nomads as well. So people who may not have a house and they just move from area to area wherever the weather's nice. So that's kind of the key differences in your target audiences for the 3 different rental styles.
So, and obviously we want to focus on the midterm, like you said, how that is really a market that maybe people hadn't realized was available to them. But if they are, and I know you said the first one you should kind of manage on your own, but you still need to have some other professionals working with you, unless you're like the handyman and you're the accountant and you're the, all these things. So how do they find the right people to work with them to help them have a successful property that is able to be rented midterm?
Yeah, so that's part of the challenge, right? Which makes real estate not necessarily passive. So referrals are always a good thing. If you're in an area, and most areas will have some kind of real estate association or group. So I recommend finding a group of local investors, and most real estate investors are happy to help others. Maybe not always, but in my experience anyways, people are happy to share connections. And that's the best way to get a good referral, right? Is from someone else in the same situation as you, who has the same needs as you, has used that person. So you need a good accountant that understands real estate. And, if you can't find a referral, interview a bunch of them and find out if they're real estate investors, because that would help ton. Lawyers are a little bit more important to the process in Canada. So again, a good real estate lawyer will help. If, in the States, find a decent title company. And then, a handyman is important as well. So you may have to audition them. Referrals, real estate agent as well is typically pretty important. And again, if you can find people in those categories who are themselves real estate investors, that should help out quite a bit.
And so how did they have their property even found by somebody who is looking to rent? Obviously, there needs to be some type of advertising or on a list somewhere. So how do they find out that information?
Yeah. So, long-term rentals, that's pretty established, right? There's ways to do that. I don't even, I don't know what the sites are in the States, but here there's plenty of internet sites that you can use, and you've got Zillow as well, things like that. But when you get to short-term rentals, now that's a little bit of a different category. So Airbnb has really, again, kind of created that category. So they're the biggest in the space. You've got Booking.com and VRBO or Verbo. Furnished finders for the traveling nurses as well, and longer midterm stays. Those are kind of the biggest ones. There's other ones out there, but Airbnb has provided the bulk of our short-term stays over the years. So a growing category is direct booking. You don't want to be dependent on one of the OTAs, the online travel agencies, for all of your revenue, because they're going to do what's in their best interest, which makes sense, right? Especially if it's a publicly held company, that may not always align with what the host wants or what is good for the host. So tremendous focus on that. And there's lots of resources out there. If you just look at Google direct booking websites. So this gives you the ability to do some marketing, like maybe it's Google, Facebook, wherever you want to market, and you have your own direct booking site. And you just got to figure out ways to get those people to come to you. Another thing that's important for direct bookings is direct marketing. So that means if you're doing midterm rentals or even short-term rentals, but especially midterm in your city, find out the biggest employers and get a hold of their HR, or some of them will have dedicated travel departments, right? And this is something that people with corporate rentals have been doing for years. They're pretty good at that. So if you can find someone who has a background in that, pick their brain. But it's just, a little bit of cold calling or emailing, find out if there's any economic activity going on in the city, and then what companies, what contractors are going to, if there's something being built, who's building it? Contact them and say, hey, do you want to put your guys up in lousy hotels? Or do you want them in a nice house that has a kitchen? They can do their groceries, they can relax. Maybe it's got a pool. I don't know. But yeah, those are the ways. So, I mean, Airbnb, you can't ignore. And there's a term going around, Airbnb bust, because a lot of hosts have seen the revenues decline recently. But that's a combination of a huge increase in the number of hosts, so a little bit of dilution in the market. And, people will say saturation as well. And then a bit of a slowdown in the growth of bookings. So bookings haven't dropped. Bookings have actually gone up North America wide. But with the increased amount of hosts, that has outpaced that. So we've seen a bit of a decline. But it's still growing. It's still huge. And like, you can't discount Airbnb. So it should probably be a part of your marketing portfolio.
Well, and I think what I have also heard some people saying lately too is just like some of the fees that people are charging now through Airbnb seem to be kind of crazy. Not only do you have the rental, then you have a service fee, then you have a cleaning fee, and sometimes the cleaning fee is really high and they're still asking you to do a bunch of things too. So I think if you are going to be renting to someone, maybe taking all of that into consideration too, and making it as visitor friendly as possible, right? Obviously you have to make enough to cover all your costs, but I guess not making it feel like someone is overpaying for something that they can then find something similar elsewhere for a better price.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the beauty of the free market, and if you read the book, I'll get into that free market a little bit, and is it really a free market or not? But the idea behind having a free market is that people can do what they want, and if they do something dumb with their product, people won't buy that product. So we've seen that with Airbnb. A lot of new hosts have come in and they just see dollar signs. And so for people who've been doing it for a while, or professional hosts, we kind of understand what people are looking for. So for a long time, we have just bundled everything into our upfront price. So when you search for one of our properties, or you find one of our properties, the price you see up front is the price you're going to pay at the end, other than taxes. We can't call that. Right. But people would, tack on the service fees and the host fees. And in the end, it's all the same, but it's how you present it, right? We have cleaning fees because we have cleaners that we pay to come every time. And people will sometimes say, hey, if I clean up, can you waive the cleaning fee? It's like, no, there's still like 5 beds that all need linens washed, and that takes time. And we're going to do that every time, whether or not you said you did it, because, we take pride in this, and we want a clean, you don't want to find hair in your bed when you get to a rental. So it's about, you have to be reasonable and firm and a little bit professional. So any industry, there's always like fits and starts, right? And Airbnb, you can kind of see it's maybe getting into the teenage years if you looked at it as a person. So there's still going to be things that happen that, you get a bit of a black eye, and just something as professional hosts we try to overcome. But yeah, it happens. And hopefully the people who are less than professional eventually get weeded out. But that's kind of the theory behind the free market, right?
Exactly. And people leaving reviews, so you can at least see what other people have experienced, and hopefully those are really honest reviews too.
Yeah, that is the lifeblood of short-term rentals, is your reviews. So, if you're doing direct bookings, maybe you have reviews on your website, maybe you don't. But certainly if you're depending on Airbnb, you have to have good reviews. And I will say, the best thing you can do for good reviews is have a clean place. Doesn't have to be the fanciest or the most up-to-date, has to be clean. If it's clean, you can A, justify your cleaning fee, and B, you'll get good reviews, which means you'll get more guests.
Exactly. Well, I would love for you to talk about any offer that you would like to share with our listeners.
Yeah, so I don't have really an offer other than, we've got a book out, You, Me, and Airbnb. I've got a copy here. So that's available on Amazon and at most, online bookstores and in print bookstores as well. So you can do that. You can get a hold of us as well if you'd like to do a consult. We are starting to offer remote hosting. So we're not going to do necessarily the handyman stuff that we'll do with our local property management, but for people looking at doing Airbnb and they need someone to hold their hand, we can do that as well. So yeah, those are offers. And I'm always happy to chat with people too, who have questions. I think there's room in this world to help people out, and we've done a lot of it in the past and will continue to do so. And if we can develop business relationships, that's great. If we can just help people, that's great too. So the book you can find, like I said, Amazon online. If you want to get a hold of us, there's, what's our website? So markandkirsten.ca is sort of our personal branding website. And then if you're looking strictly for the property management, that would be joyhill.ca, joyhill.ca. And since the book has come out, I've written an additional chapter just with some more in-depth information about the midterm rentals and like the nuts and bolts. So if you've gotten the book and you want more information, just shoot us an email and I will send that out to you.
Perfect. And what would be that email address?
Oh, yeah. So that would be mkrikke@joyhill.ca. So mkrikke@joyhill.ca. And, if you forget, just go to markandkirsten.ca. There's a web form, send it in, and we'll get back to you within, 1 to 7 days.
Perfect.
I'm just kidding. Within a few hours.
Right. Well, thank you. And I appreciate that offer, even of allowing someone to contact you too, because I feel that some people probably are interested in this, but may feel a little bit overwhelmed with the potential of having to take all of this on. So having a mentor or resource or something, I think is, much appreciated. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And for the listeners, I am so thankful that you tuned in. I hope you found this discussion helpful and that you enjoyed the discussion that we did have on these various topics of the long-term, midterm, and short-term, but focusing really on why the untapped market of the midterm rentals is the best option. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Mark at the links that he shared, or you can send us a message at media@abandp.com. And I hope you can join me for my next interview. And remember, you can connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. You could also find my show, Biz Help for You, posted on several favorite platforms, including iTunes, Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And would you please share my show with those you know and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform? I'd really appreciate your support. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.